Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. Era stood alone on the edge of the barren world, the wind howling through the cracked earth beneath her feet. She looked up at the vast sky where streaks of distant stars flickered like forgotten memories. Xylon 7, a planet ruled by an alien race that valued precision and perfection, had cast her out. They said she was too big, too strong, and not what they needed. The Xylons, a race of beings designed for intelligence and efficiency, held strict beliefs about what was right. They had their rules about body size, shape, and capability, rules that Era didn't fit. Her human body, taller and stronger than theirs, had made her an outcast. The Xylons had tried to modify their environment to suit their needs, but Era's very existence threatened their delicate balance. They feared that her form, so different from theirs, could lead to problems in their controlled world. So there was nothing but the endless stretch of rocky terrain and scattered ruins, reminders of a long-forgotten time. But something in the air had changed. A faint hum, almost like a whisper, seemed to drift on the wind, carrying with it a sense of possibility. She paused, wiping the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Her heart beat faster, not out of fear but from the spark of something new, something that had been missing in her life since her exile. She could feel it, there was something more out here, beyond the empty stretches of the wasteland, a signal, perhaps. She wasn't sure, but it was a reason to keep moving, to keep pushing forward. For days, Era had been alone, wandering the planet with only the ruins for company. The Exilines had given up on her, but that didn't mean she had to give up on herself. She had always been resourceful, always able to find a way when there seemed to be no way. And today, something was calling to her. Elra followed the hum, letting it guide her through the dust. The further she went, the stronger it became. It was almost like a pulse, rhythmic and steady, as if the planet itself was alive with some forgotten secret. She moved faster, her steps quickening as the sound grew louder. The map she had found earlier hadn't led her anywhere useful, just more empty land. But this felt different. This was something she could reach, she could feel it in her bones. As she climbed a rocky outcrop, she saw it in the distance. Hidden behind a series of jagged cliffs was a structure, a large crumbling building, its sharp edges jutting out of the earth like the spine of some ancient beast. The hum seemed to come from inside it. A sense of urgency gripped her as she descended toward it, her heart pounding in her ears. The building looked old, abandoned, but it was clear that it hadn't always been this way. There were signs of life here once, signs of something bigger. She stepped cautiously toward the entrance, her senses alert for any sign of danger. The door was half open, and a cold breeze swept out from within. Era hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door fully open. The inside was dark, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. But there, in the center of the room, was a large glowing console. It hummed with energy, its lights flickering weakly but still alive. Era stepped forward, her fingers brushing over the cold surface of the console. A strange sensation washed over her as she touched it, like a wave of information flooding into her mind. The technology was alien, unlike anything she had ever seen before, but there was something familiar about it, something human deep within its circuits. The hum she had been following was coming from this device. It wasn't just a machine, it was a message, a key to something she had yet to understand. And for the first time since her exile, Lara felt a flicker of hope. Whatever this was, it was the beginning of something important. The wasteland had not been a place of death but of refuge, a place where her journey could finally begin. Era sat in the darkness of the hidden room, the flickering glow of the ancient console casting long shadows on the walls. She had spent hours trying to understand the strange device before her. It pulsed with energy, humming softly as if it had been waiting for her, but despite her best efforts, its true purpose remained a mystery. Just as she was about to give up, a sharp sound echoed from the entrance. She froze, her muscles tensing, every instinct alert. Had the Xylons found her, or was it something else? The hum of the device suddenly seemed louder, as though it was reacting to the new presence. She turned toward the door, her hand instinctively reaching for a long metal rod she had found earlier. The dark figure that stepped into the room was human, not alien. The Lara's heart raced as she studied the stranger's face. His clothes were rugged, worn from traveling across harsh terrain, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "I thought we'd find you here," the man said, his voice low but confident. Elara didn't lower her guard. "Who are you?" she demanded, her grip tightening on the rod. "I'm Kale," the man answered. "I've been sent to find you." "By who?" Era asked, her mind racing. Had the Cylons sent him to trick her, or was he from the rebellion the Cylons had tried to erase? Kale stepped forward slowly, his movements careful. "By the human resistance. We've been watching you. We know what the Cylons did." Thoughts raced through Era's mind. She had heard rumors of a human resistance, whispers from the few humans she had met before her exile, but she had never believed them. How could anyone stand against the powerful Cylons? They were too advanced, too controlled. But Kale seemed different. His presence was real, and his words carried weight. "Why do you want me?" Elara asked, her suspicions still. "You found me," Era said, her voice steady now. "Let's find out what the Cylons are hiding." Kale nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "Together, we can stop them." As they left the room, Era's thoughts lingered on the strange device. It was more than a machine, it was a message, and she was ready to hear it. The journey was far from over, but now she had a purpose. The Cylons might have cast her out, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. She was about to discover something much bigger than she could ever have imagined. Era and Kale moved quickly through the desolate landscape, their footsteps muffled by the soft hum of the wind. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the broken ground. They had no time to waste. The Cylon forces were close, and the moment the resistance made their move, they knew the enemy would be hunting them down. The map Kale had shown her led to a hidden path, a secret route through the rough terrain that would take them to a safe house deep within the mountains. But the journey wasn't going to be easy. They had already seen signs of Cylon patrols, sleek, high-tech ships that could spot them from miles away if they didn't stay hidden. They'd be caught. The air grew thicker as they moved into the jagged hills. The ground beneath their feet became uneven, the sharp rocks making it difficult to walk quickly. The Lara's eyes scanned their surroundings, always alert, ready for any sign of danger. She had survived Xylon 7 on her own for so long, but this was different. She wasn't just surviving now, she was part of something much bigger. Kale led the way, his every movement calculated. His eyes darted between the narrow paths, looking for the safest route. "We're almost there," he whispered, glancing back at Aurora. Era nodded, but she didn't feel safe yet. They were still too exposed. They had to make it through the next few miles without being spotted. The Exilons had sophisticated detection systems, and if they were caught, the consequences would be dire. Suddenly, a distant sound broke the silence, the low rumble of engines. Aar's heart skipped a beat. She looked up, spotting the sleek outline of a silent ship flying high above. The patrol was near. "Move!" Kale urged, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned sharply, leading them into a narrow canyon that wound through the rocks like a maze. The walls rose high on both sides, casting deep shadows that made it hard to see anything further ahead. The Lara followed, her senses on high alert. The sound of the ship grew louder, and the Lara's breathing quickened. They couldn't let it get any closer. If they did, they'd be trapped. Then he had to stay ahead, out of sight. As they hurried through the canyon, Era's eyes caught sight of movement ahead. She froze, raising a hand to signal Kale to stop. A shadow darted across the path in front of them. Someone, no, something, was ahead. Kale pulled her back against the canyon wall, pressing his body into the stone, his eyes scanning the shadows. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a silent scout, carrying a small high-tech weapon. Kale didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, his hand grabbing the scout's wrist and twisting it, disarming the enemy in one swift motion. The scout let out a quiet yelp, but Kale quickly silenced him, pressing a hand over his mouth. "Ira, move!" Kale ordered, tossing the scalp aside and grabbing the weapon. Without a word, Ira bolted forward, her legs carrying her swiftly through the canyon. She could hear the scout's footsteps behind her, the sound of the patrol ship still close. They couldn't stop now. The stakes were too high. The Lara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just a mission, this was their chance to fight back. Together, they disappeared into the depths of the canyon, their figures swallowed by the darkness, and the chase continued. The Cylon forces were closing in, but they weren't going to give up. Not yet. The dark interior of the rebel base was a stark contrast to the blinding sunlight outside. The Lara could barely make out the shapes of people moving in the shadows, their faces set with determination. She had never seen so many humans working together before, and it filled her with a mix of awe and hope. This was the heart of the rebellion, a place where the last remnants of humanity's fight for freedom were being kept alive. Kale led her through the maze of metal corridors, his steps purposeful. "This way," he said, gesturing for her to follow. They passed several rooms filled with small groups of rebels, their conversations hushed as if every word was too precious to waste. They reached a large room at the back of the base where a woman stood hunched over a glowing console. Dar. Celine, the rebellion's chief scientist, was focused on a set of complex readouts, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, but she didn't need to look up to know they had arrived. "Era," Dr. Celine said, her voice calm but with a hint of urgency. "I've been expecting you." Era stood just inside the doorway, unsure of what to say. She had no idea why they had brought her here, but she was beginning to feel the weight of it. The rebellion had placed their hopes on her, but she wasn't sure what she had to offer. She was just a woman who had been exiled. What could she possibly do to change the course of the war? "You've already done more than you realize," Kale said, his voice steady. "We've seen what you're capable of. Now Dr. Celine needs your help." Ella turned her attention to Dr. Celine, who was now looking at her with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "We need to understand the alien technology you found," Dr. Celine explained. "It could be the key to turning the tide against the guidelines, but we can't make sense of it without your help." Era's eyes narrowed. "What exactly do you want from me?" she asked. Dr. Celine's fingers hovered over the console, her expression serious. "You're unique. Your body, your mind, they're not like anything the Cylons have seen. We believe that the technology you discovered is linked to your physiology in some way. The device is designed to connect to the mind, and we think you're the missing piece." Elra felt a rush of confusion and uncertainty. Her mind? The Cylons had always treated her as an outcast because of her size and strength, but to be told that her body was somehow part of a larger plan? It didn't make sense. "Are you saying that I can somehow control this technology?" AR asked. Dr. Celine nodded. "We believe so, but we need to run some tests first. We need to see how your body interacts with the system." Era hesitated. It was a lot to take in. She had spent her life being rejected by the Cylons for who she was, and now she was being asked to trust in her own unique qualities. The thought was unsettling. But as she looked around the room, at the rebels, at their faces full of hope, she realized that she couldn't turn back now. "All right," Era said, her voice steady. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Dr. Celine moved aside, gesturing for Era to sit in the chair that had been prepared for her. The console whirred to life as the room filled with the sound of machines activating. The screens around them flickered, showing symbols and patterns Alara didn't understand, but she felt something deep within her stir, a sense of purpose. She wasn't just a victim of the silence, she was a key to something much greater. As she sat down, Lara steeled herself for whatever was coming. The test would begin soon, and the future of the rebellion could depend on how she responded. But for the first time since her exile, Alara felt that she was finally where she was meant to be. The air in the room was thick with tension as Era sat in the chair, her body rigid with anticipation. The hum of the machines filled the space, a low, steady sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Dr. Celine and Kale stood nearby, watching closely. The flickering screen showed strange symbols, lines that swirled and shifted in ways that made no sense to Era. She had never seen anything like this before. "You're doing fine," Dr. Celine said, her voice calm but urgent. "Just relax. Let the technology connect to you." Era nodded, though her mind was anything but calm. How could she relax when she had no idea what was happening? She had never been part of anything like this. The Cylons had always treated her as an outsider, and now she was being asked to connect to something beyond her understanding. The console in front of her beeped once, and the strange symbols on the screen shifted again. Lara felt a sudden sharp pulse of energy run through her body. It wasn't painful, but it was intense. Her muscles twitched, her nerves fired with a sensation that was almost like electricity coursing through her veins. She clenched her fists, trying to control the surge of power that seemed to be building inside her. "Steady," Kale said quietly, watching her closely. "You can do this." Elra took a deep breath, focusing on the strange sensation. She could feel the machine as if it were alive, reaching into her mind. It was an unsettling feeling, but something about it felt right. It was like the machine was waiting for her to understand it, to give it something it needed. Suddenly, the symbols on the screen aligned in a perfect pattern, and Alara felt a wave of understanding wash over her. It wasn't like a thought or a memory, it was more like a language, one she hadn't learned but somehow knew. She could feel the power of the machine, its potential, its purpose. It was a key, a tool, a weapon. The sidelines had been using it, controlling it, but it was meant for something more. A sudden burst of light filled the room, and Era gasped as she felt the connection solidify. It wasn't just the machine, it was her too. Her body, her mind, her very being was now linked to it. She could feel the pulse of energy inside her, and it was almost like the world around her had shifted. "What is this?" Alara whispered, barely able to speak as the connection grew stronger. "It's you," Dr. Celine said, her voice filled with awe. "You've synced with the system. You're controlling it." Alara could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had always been told that she was too much, too big, too strong, too different. And yet here she was, connected to something that could change everything. The Xylines had always seen her as a mistake, something that didn't belong. But now she was more than just an outcast. She was the key. Kale stepped forward, his expression serious. "This is just the beginning. Now that you're connected, we can take the fight to them. We can use this power to stop the Xylons, to reclaim what's ours." Elra looked at the screens again, her mind racing with possibilities. She had never imagined anything like this, never believed that she could be part of something this powerful. But now she could feel it, her purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was fighting back. The room seemed to pulse with energy, the machine at the center of it all. Lara stood, her body now more attuned to the strange power that surrounded her. She was ready. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The Exilons had underestimated her, and soon they would learn just how wrong they were. "We're ready," Era said, her voice strong and steady. Dr. Celine and Kale nodded. The rebellion's fight had just taken on a new dimension, and Era was ready to lead the charge.